Cool. Alrighty. So we have Maddison Cate here on What's Your Voyage. You have a lot to do with fertility, embracing motherhood, embracing holistic healing and holistic living. And how did you even get to this point, given that we're like pretty much in a world where there's a lot of people that go, do I even want to have kids?
Great question. Starting off with a big one. And that's funny you ask that because this is really something that I sat with for many years. And I was never really sure if I wanted to have kids either, to be honest, with the state of the world and everything that's happening out there. Like, there's just lots that I guess I don't like and lots that makes me nervous around, bringing more children into this world that we're so unsure about. So, I guess for me, I kind of sat on the side of the fence of I'm not sure for many, many years. And I just did me. And I just spent lots of years exploring everything that I was passionate about and traveling. And, I really didn't, I guess, plan to become a mother. It definitely fell kind of, just in my lap, which I guess is lucky in a lot of senses, especially working in the fertility world. That's definitely not the case for many people. And I really.
So were you working in the fertility world first before? Or?
No, not at all, actually. So I am a dietitian by trade. I had finished my studies and, I was kind of dipping in and out of practicing and just really finding what my passion was within the world of health. I kind of left my degree without any real clear focus or passion, really. And it wasn't until I fell pregnant by surprise at 23 and moved into pregnancy and motherhood and birth and just the wild ride that birth was I like, holy crap, this is my thing. Like, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for.
I do want to get into that in terms of what actual motherhood's like and like being pregnant, because I'm never going to know, no matter how many people try to tell men these days that they may be able to get pregnant. But in terms of like, what is it about the state of the world that you're kind of like, whoa, that you're not really liking?
Yeah, many things. Like, I guess first and foremost, like the way we approach health and our food system. Like, obviously, with that being my background, there's a lot of things that I don't like there, and a lot of things that I guess makes me quite nervous in terms of which direction we're heading.
Like, what are the issues with the food system?
I guess the mass agriculture system that we are obviously forced to produce with at the moment to keep up with the demands of the amount of people. And for me, the biggest disconnect that we have from our food, so many people have no idea where their food's coming from. And a lot of people just don't actually have the skills even to start to learn to prepare their own food, to know where it's coming from, which for me, I think really came to light, like, the last couple of years, with the pandemic and the food shortages and, everything flying off the supermarket shelves. Like, I just couldn't stop thinking, oh my gosh, so many of us have lost skills. Like, if we lost connection from a supermarket for a considerable amount of time, what would we do?
We would be struggling hardcore. Definitely.
Yeah.
There's a guy in the UK and because obviously the UK had like way more food shortages than we did. And he was like, I had money. I had like a good job, all this stuff. But then when that hit, I realized that I actually couldn't provide for my family when push comes to shove, and we're kind of blessed that we've been living in this like stable times, but like most of history hasn't been stable. Hence why everybody knew how to, sew their clothes back up and store food for long periods of time. And it sounds like from what you said that you have issue with like the centralization of the food system, or is it like the standards of the food system? Or is it more just like, hey, we should be independent as people?
Definitely both. I think a large part, the standards as well for me, like obviously having to produce at such a large scale, there isn't a lot of, time and attention necessarily put into quality and, soil repletion, or anything like that. So, we're kind of just churning out to keep up with the masses. And in turn, we're losing quality over time, as the soil becomes more and more depleted as we're harvesting another crop every year, not putting back into the soil like, would have been done many years ago because we would have been producing at much smaller scales, Inevitably, we're left with food that's less nutrient rich, less nourishing for our bodies. And Yeah, with a lot of, I guess, food companies and food manufacturers trying to produce, new products and new things and using ingredients that are cost effective for the business that they are, they're not necessarily always looking at it through the lens of, okay, what's best for our bodies and how can we nourish the people that are actually eating our food.
For sure. I mean, canola oil is a great example of that, right? It used to
Big
be
time.
like engine oil or something.
Yep, exactly. And, that's rampant. That's everywhere. Like you struggle to go into the supermarket and find a product that doesn't have something like that in it. So, I very much found over the years, to actually eat in a way that is in alignment with nature. And I guess our best interest is getting harder and harder because
What does that mean? What do you mean eating in line with nature?
seasonally, I guess,
Okay.
the foods that we, in my opinion, are meant to be eating. I don't think we are meant to be eating everything at all times of the year. You walk into a grocery store at any given month of the year and you're going to get bananas and you're going to get avocados and anything else you want, really.
I do love bananas all year round. I do.
I hear you. But, for the most part, that's not how it's really, meant to be.
And do you think that has like an actual health effect on us? Or by the way, can you bring the mic just a little bit closer?
Sure.
Thanks. Yeah, do you think that actually has a health effect on us by doing that? Or it's more just like being able to live within your means within a sense, but like live independently based on the ecology of like where you're actually habitating?
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think it has more so as much of a negative health effect. I think it's just an interesting observation. And I guess, it kind of dips into that whole, information overload that is the world that we live in, but through the lens of food too. When you have so many options all of the time, it can be overwhelming and, it leads to like decision fatigue and people, just opting for whatever's there, So, I mean, I think largely it's just, just really quite different to how things should be, in my opinion.
Yeah, okay. And what was your like path working in dietitian stuff? Like, because you're trained in it. Did you start working in it?
Yeah. So I did work a little bit before I started traveling overseas, and I guess I was very much in like the mainstream world of dietetics. So I finished uni and basically the couple paths that you have are really working in a hospital, which is, quite an acute setting and you're dealing with quite intense cases, or private practice, or you can also kind of go down the policy path. So yeah, I was very much in the hospital world, which is quite ironic because now like that's the last place I would want to be. It's not really a place where I think we should be making health changes. That's kind of the bottom of the line, things should have changed way earlier before, you're in hospital. So
yeah, so like focusing on preventative measures.
Definitely.
As opposed to just like treating people. I mean, but okay. So people shouldn't go to hospital?
No.
What do you mean? Flesh that out for me.
Yeah, I guess so. As a dietitian, if we are in a hospital, we're very much dealing with like, kind of end of the line, very chronic things. And of course, there's a place for emergency medicine. And there are times where there are quite extreme and interesting cases that come in and they do need our help, if it is being, fed through, a tube or intravenously because there's been a freak accident or something like that. Like, absolutely, that's our place there. But there's lots and lots of chronic diseases that are only really being managed in a hospital setting, so people are coming in, they might have, liver issues or whatever it might be. And we're kind of trying to do the groundwork in a hospital when really, it should have happened many steps previously. And I would even argue beyond just the dietitians, it should also be the food systems, the manufacturers, what's available, it goes way beyond just us.
Yeah, okay. So what do you see as like a good diet then? There's a lot of opinions out there about what is a good diet these days.
Oh, that's a big question and something I've really sat with a lot, and I've had quite a journey with myself. So I don't know, I kind of have experimented. I've really used myself as a guinea pig, I guess you could say, over the years. And I've tried on, honestly, just about everything you could probably name and list just because I find it interesting. And I've been looking for the best diet, I guess, for many, many years. I've moved from paleo to vegan to everything, like you name it, keto, like I've done it, I've tried it.
Did you try carnivore?
Well, for a little bit. Didn't last long.
Yeah, okay.
And I guess like ultimately what I've found is I don't think there is any perfect diet per se. That's my answer as of right now. And I think it is like there's a lot to consider. So you have to look at your genetics. I really think like, we all have different ancestors. We all come from different, indigenous population groups many, many years ago, all of which ate probably vastly different diets. If you look at one population group, they may have had, 10% animal products in their diet versus you might look at a different population group that maybe ate more like 80% animal products in their diet. And it all comes down to, I guess, not only the climate that they live in, but where they live. And I really think that has effects on our genetics and ultimately, what we can process. So I think we all have those unique variances that we really have to consider. And there really is no best diet or one size fits all.
Yeah, but like see what your 100 years ago or 200 years ago the ancestors would have been eating and try that as like a base point. Is that what you did?
Yeah, I did. I did a lot of digging into my ancestors and I really uncovered a lot. And
what's your ancestry?
So I am actually Polish. I also have a lot of Dutch. And there's actually there was a place called Prussia.
Yes.
Yeah. So I have lots of Prussian ancestors, and I traced it right back to the first woman that came to Australia. And
When was that? When did they come? Or she come?
I think it was 18 something. I don't remember off the top of my head. Maybe the 1830s. That's a guess though.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, my family, my grandfather traced us all the way back to Scotland in like 1300s.
Wow.
He did the deep dive. We have like maps and stuff about it and like little books
Wow.
he put together. It was cool.
That's incredible.
So I might have to look that up so then I know what they would eat because he may have written it down.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah, okay. And so how did travel, I mean, it sounds like this traveling time, where did you go and like how did that actually go about like opening your mind? Because it sounds like you were pretty just like what was just happening in society, like, oh, dietitians, it's supposed to be like this. Like were you pretty fixed on the point of view that you had learnt and you were like, oh, that's the truth? And then did that like change for you and it was like a bit of an awakening?
Yeah. So ultimately, I guess I finished my degree and I was left pretty disappointed, to put it truthfully. What I learned was obviously a lot of the background, the necessities, biology, chemistry, etc., understanding the human system. But in terms of what I was left with to then go and practice and put out into the world didn't really sit right in my body and in
what they leave you with.
Basically the food pyramid.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was really working with. And for me, I didn't necessarily feel that was optimal. So I really just went on this quest, I guess, for lack of a better word. I was 19 and I ended up going over to India, and that was like my first overseas trip. I went by myself. And
You went by yourself to India for your first trip? Jeez.
I know.
You are brave.
I really threw myself in the deep end. I don't know why. Just one day I was like, I need to do this. And I booked the trip, and for a good month in the lead up beforehand, I like hardly slept. I was like, what on earth am I doing? I'm so scared. And I ended up going through with it. And it was like that for me was the turning point, in so many ways. Just being exposed to a totally opposite way of life and an opposite way of, eating and being. And then I guess diving into the world of Ayurveda and yoga and all of those things.
You're going to run me through what all these things are. It's all right. We got time. Run me through. How do they live differently? I haven't been to India yet. I only know from like movies, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, how's India different? And then what are those last words you said that sound like yoga practices?
Yeah. I guess where do I start? So differently. I guess first of all, like culturally, what really stood out to me and what was really deeply humbling for myself is, there was a lot of poverty, obviously, which was absolutely heartbreaking. But, these people that had, next to nothing were so happy to give to you and so happy to receive you and, host you and have you there, and were so warming and welcoming. And yeah, like I said, would just give from their own pocket. And it just totally blew my mind. That's so different to how things are in this Western world that we live in. It's very much me, myself, and I, and, the achievements I have and where I'm going. But I felt in India, it was very much like this collective, for the benefit of, everyone, of the community, of society. And obviously that's quite a generalization, but that was my perception at the time. So that's like, I guess, the biggest cultural shift and difference that I saw there. But also like the way that they eat is very different. There's lots of like curries and, rice and those more richer foods, which is so different to how we eat here. And just lots of more like practices and I guess rituals. And yeah, I can't really speak too much on behalf of those, but just observing like the way they went about life and the reverence and respect they had for, certain animals in their religions. And
yeah, well, they really like cows, right?
Yeah.
The cows are the holy animal, yeah?
Yeah, they sure are. And they're everywhere. They're like, you go to the little villages and they're all walking on the road and it's incredible. Like,
so they don't eat beef?
I think some people might, but I think in the religion that's prominent there, they don't.
That's Hindu, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that, there might be exceptions to that, but yeah.
Yeah, cool. And then what are those last two words that you said before?
Yeah, so Ayurveda, that is basically their medicine system. So yeah, it's a way of, I guess, viewing health and well-being, and they have traditional Ayurvedic doctors, and it's just a whole way of living. That's really different to what we do here. And I guess it's just, one lens to look at health through, just as, Chinese medicine is, and there's many different lenses around the world.
How did you even go about learning about that when you went to this round? Like, did you pre-plan to learn about that or?
So I did pre-plan to go and do some yoga training, and that's what I did. But also as part of this yoga training, I was very much introduced to Ayurveda, and I actually ended up, getting sick over there. And then I ended up going to an Ayurvedic doctor, and I was kind of exposed to it that way. I definitely am no master in that topic of Ayurveda. It was just something I, dipped my toes into and dabbled in. I guess I just had that curiosity, I was looking for those answers outside of what I learned here. And I was like, let's go try on this hat. Let's see what I can take from this. And I guess I was just really trying to find that truth of, okay, what is optimal health and how do we get there and what does it look like?
How is it different, the Ayurveda?
So basically they have like these key, I don't know the words anymore, mum brain. They basically have like these main, like doshas, that's the word, doshas.
Okay.
And they're different body types. So they don't say that, we should all eat and be and do the same. It all depends on whatever body type that you are. And there's a few different ones. And
is it body type in the same way that like a PT would look at a body type? Like you're an ectomorph, you're a mesomorph, or is it different like measurements?
Similar. So they do kind of consider like, I guess, structure, but also there are other properties to it. So, like warmth and all sorts of other different properties. So if you're dry or cool or whatever your tendencies are. So there's a little bit that goes into it. And then, yeah, they suggest certain foods and practices and ways of being depending on, whatever dosha that you are.
Wow. So if you're a person that always gets cold feet and cold hands, they take that into account and go, your diet needs to have mangoes.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, that is something they take into account.
That's cool. There you go. And what was the other one?
Yeah, so yoga. So yeah.
What kind of yogas did you learn?
Ashtanga.
Yeah, cool. What was Ashtanga again?
So that's actually probably one of the most intense styles of yoga. It's quite rigid, and there's like a primary series that you follow. So the principle is that you do the same series like every day with your practice, versus other styles of yoga. If you go to a class, you're likely doing a different flow every time.
I like those ones.
Yeah.
They're more interesting.
Definitely. I think there's a lot of self-discipline involved in, Ashtanga and the primary series. And a lot of, I guess, mastery. People really aspire to master that series. But yeah, it is quite intense, quite full on the body.
How long did you do the Ashtanga learning for?
So I did that for a month full time, intensive. intensive. And yeah, we practiced like multiple times per day. I remember the first week in, I could honestly hardly move. I'd never practiced so much yoga in my life. 2 to 3 practices a day. I was like, oh my gosh.
It's a lot of yoga.
A lot of yoga. But then, yeah, your body softens and I got there. I survived.
Yeah. Do you still do yoga?
Partially, yes. Not the primary series or Ashtanga anymore. I've very much like evolved since becoming a mother and postpartum. I don't have time to do like the whole hour and a half primary series anymore.
Fair.
So it looks quite different these days.
All right. So you traveled over, and how old were you when you did this huge trip?
So I was 19 when I did India. Then I came back home and I had a couple topics left to finish at uni, finish that. And then I graduated and I took right off again. So for another couple years, I would have been maybe 21 at that point.
Where'd you go that time?
So I went to Indonesia and did like Bali. And then I also did the Philippines, Thailand, Hawaii.
You're just like, give me culture shock.
Pretty much. That's what I really sought. Like there wasn't a single part of me that was like, yep, I want to go to Europe. I was like, what is the most different to everything I've ever known in my whole life? And let's go there.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. I get that thirst for knowledge of something that's just completely foreign. Definitely.
That's what I was after.
Yeah. So did you just go for travel and fun, or like for that trip? Because it sounds like the other one was, while it was definitely travel and fun, was also like intentional of like, hey, I want to go learn these practices.
Yeah. So similar, I guess it was both. So it definitely was for fun. And it was also, I think the real driving factor for me was I wasn't ready to dive into the world of practice yet because I hadn't quite found the answers that I was looking for. So I was still, on that quest of like, let's just see what's out there. So yeah, I was very much, having fun and traveling, but also just really trying so many different things.
Yeah, cool. And then, all right, so then randomly, like you had a boyfriend, you got knocked up, you're like, wow, I'm going to be a mum. This is wild. Tell me about the journey of like, I mean, if that's correct even, becoming a mum.
That's pretty correct.
Yeah.
So I think we were together for about a year and I was actually away right before we conceived. So he was back here in Australia and I was on like a little bit of a solo trip, just finishing up something that I wanted to get done. And I just had this huge calling to come home early before my time was up where I was. So I ended up booking a flight home and it had been a good few months since we'd seen each other. And no kidding, the day I was home is the day we conceived. So that night we conceived Reef. And it definitely was not planned. It was not intentional at all. I knew I was ovulating and I was like, no, absolutely do not. And he was like, okay, yeah, no worries. But it didn't happen that way. And it was a funny one, in hindsight, had that happened probably at any other time in my life, I would have been like, okay, crap, I need to go get the morning after pill. But for some reason, this particular time, that wasn't even on my radar. I was like, oh, it's all fine. It's all good. I don't need to stress about this, And yeah, the weeks went on and I found out I was pregnant and I was 23 and my whole world was rattled.
Yeah. What spaces did you go through?
So many. Like every day I tried on a different outlook of looking at it. I was like, no way can I do this. Yep, we're going to do this. The next day, no way, I'm not doing this. And it was just one of those things. I just was so torn, like all the emotions, devastated, happy, all of the things. Like I was really I guess wrapping my head around the idea of like, who am I going to be? I'm 23. Like I have so much, life left. How can this possibly look or work?
And were you like against the idea of like aborting?
I wasn't. I was open to it and I did inquire. We explored and tossed up that idea. But every single time I tried to, seriously inquire, something would happen. So, I called the hotline of wherever I was at the time and inquired to figure out what the process looked like. And the lady was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I can't actually book you in for an appointment. My system's down today. And I was like, okay.
So there's just these random things that would just get in the way.
Yeah. And there were multiple other roadblocks. And I was like, okay, I'm listening.
Yeah. And then did you see that as like a sign? Were you into signs and stuff?
Definitely. There were so many days I was like, I just need a clear sign. Like, give me a clear yes that this is, meant to be. I guess because being so young, I was so nervous around, what everyone would think. Nobody in my world had had a baby. I didn't know anyone that was a parent. It was like me.
Yeah, like your first cab off the rank, you're like, shit.
Yeah, pretty much. I was like, can I do this?
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. And then in terms of actually like being pregnant, like what is that even like?
The most incredible thing I've ever experienced in my whole life. It's hard to put into words. And it's an interesting one because so many women have so many different experiences within pregnancy. But for me, like my body just felt the best it's ever felt. So ultimately, I guess what led me to the whole health world and studying nutrition and dietetics is I had my own digestive issues when I was young, IBS, all of those sorts of things. And when I felt
what's IBS?
Irritable bowel syndrome.
Okay.
Which is basically like, we don't know what's wrong with you. Here's a box for all of these random symptoms that you get. But what was really interesting is when I was pregnant, a lot of those symptoms went away and I could basically eat anything and I felt amazing. So
that's so random.
I know.
Why?
I actually don't even know why. I haven't actually looked into why, but it is a very common experience that I hear about in my world. Lots of
having a baby heals women.
Yeah, honestly.
What? Okay, what else? Because I'm just so curious about what it actually is like to be pregnant.
Yeah, it's wild. For me, it was also very emotional, obviously. I was 23. I was definitely wrapping my head around this whole, grieving who I was and also celebrating who I was becoming and the fact that I had a life growing inside me. It was the most magical and joyful time, but also the saddest because you're letting go of, everything that you kind of knew beforehand. Everything's changing, your body, your mind, just everything. So it's big, it's really big. And there's actually a term for it and it's called matrescence. And basically this is the journey of becoming a mother. And it's a rite of passage, which means obviously when you go through that, you won't be the same as the person that you were beforehand. And we move through a few rites of passages in our lifetime, and pregnancy being one. And it's honestly just emotionally kind of walking through the fire. You're letting go of everything and you're kind of burning off everything that was to celebrate and welcome all that's coming. So yeah, for me, it was very much more so an emotional journey than it was a physical one per se. I didn't really experience morning sickness or all those things you kind of hear about. It was just a lot of grieving and stepping into the new version of myself.
Yeah, okay. What was it like for you, growing a baby and your body changing?
Yeah, it's one of those funny ones. I guess most people would think, oh, you're getting bigger. How does that feel? Is that scary? But it wasn't at all. It was the most in love with my body I think I've ever been, the most powerful I think I've ever felt. And yeah, it's just incredible. I don't even have words for it.
Was it so you're saying the most powerful you ever felt, but obviously you weren't physically the most powerful in terms of strength. Was it just feeling like you always wanted to give your body a hug because you had this baby inside of you?
Yeah, a deep, deep appreciation. And I guess more so when I say powerful, I mean energetically powerful. Holy crap, I'm building a life. This is.
And was that something you worked to channel, or is it just that just came over you?
It just came over me. Yeah. And that's definitely something I hear a lot. A lot of women have this new deep found appreciation for their body. For so many of us, there's all these stories around, our bodies and, looking this way or that way. And for so many years previously, I'd been oh, I'm not this enough. I'm not that enough. And when I fell pregnant, it was just you know what? I'm enough. I'm growing a life.
That's so cool. That's very cool. Well, I feel like a lot of people need to hear that these days.
Yeah.
That's a very cool thing. I am enough because I'm growing this baby. Because it is a magical thing.
It's huge.
It's cool. So I had a guy called Giovanni on, and he has a company that essentially sources and develops products and all that. And one of the products that they've made is this pad that has like a freezer pack in it for postnatal. So then like down there, it like cools women down because I think they're just in pain.
Yeah, wow. That would be a good thing to create. And I guess
so he's created it.
incredible. Wow. And like, is it reusable?
No.
No.
I did ask that if it's like a pouch that you have to, but no, it's just like a one time, like a pad.
Interesting. There you go. I guess
it'd probably get dirty, right?
totally. And I think a lot of women, I think I've heard of people like freezing nappies and or like really big maternity pads as well and putting them in the freezer. But I guess like that would probably be a better, easier option. Save freezer space, I would imagine.
That's probably true. What are the kind of things that you actually had to go through physically from being pregnant because obviously you've built this whole maternity thing, and I want to go into that. And like, I guess, what are you actually teaching?
Yeah. So, where do I start? So I guess physically, pregnancy really is like the most demanding time of our life. It's like running a marathon. But the needs that you have during that time for nutrients, for minerals, energy, like it's the most taxing as you could imagine. Like you're literally building a whole nother body from scratch. So that takes a lot of raw material. So there's lots of growing and changing and, sharing what you're eating. You're not just eating for yourself, like you are feeding your little one. And if you're not getting all of those raw materials, then, your body takes from itself to give to that little one. So there's a lot of pouring into this baby that is happening. And if you don't have the reserves there, it can be exhausting. And it's a lot. Like, they say women lose around 10% of their mineral stores per pregnancy. And if you're not replenishing that, a few babies down, you're pretty depleted and, you're going to really be feeling that. So that's exactly what, we teach around Women's Wisdom Co. So that's my business that I've created with my good friend that's a naturopath. And we essentially really speak around the preconception phase. And this is before you even fall pregnant. But the main reason being is that if you enter pregnancy with your nutrient stores full and, you are nourished and your body is thriving, like you are setting yourself up for the best start to motherhood, to pregnancy, and to have, a baby that is healthy and happy and thriving. Because you have all of those ingredients there.
Cool. That makes sense. So what kind of things do people need to eat? And is it supplements or is it just diet, like to be fully nutrient rich?
Yeah. So honestly, it's everything. So not just supplements of like, that's probably the first thing you think of because everyone's like, take a prenatal. Like that's definitely part of it, but it's everything. So, our eggs as women take around 4 months to fully develop. So when we ovulate, that egg that has been ovulated, the 4 months prior to that, everything that you ate, everything that you did, everything that you thought, everything that you were exposed to ultimately went into programming and tweaking that DNA that is then released in that egg that month. So there's this 4-month buffer window where, your baby is essentially already kind of being made and formed and tweaked. And for men, it's around 3 months. So the sperm takes 3 months to fully mature. So everything that you're doing for the 3 months before you conceive with your partner is in that sperm cell as well. So there's this huge window for opportunity for changing the health outcomes of our little ones. Like a lot of people think once you have conceived, that's when you start building your baby, but it's definitely not the case. It happens way before that moment of conception.
Wow. That just adds a whole nother level to it, doesn't it? Shit.
It does. I don't know if I actually answered your question then, but.
Well, I guess the question is like, what do people actually do to make sure that that is dialed in and you train for that life, if you will?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a big one and that could be a whole episode on its own. But I guess like, first of all, like the first layer is obviously diet. Like, we get multiple opportunities every day to get this right. We eat multiple times a day. So making sure that's really nailed, just, full of all of the nutrients that you need to build a baby. And that really just comes from having a really like whole foods, healthy, balanced diet. Like it's not really rocket science. I guess it can be trying to navigate the marketing claims in the food world out here, but
head to the farmer's market, you'll be right.
Exactly. Farmer's market, get some eggs, some local, grass-fed meat, and like you're well on your way. Some fresh veggies. So first of all, it's your diet. And then there's supplements as well, and just getting like a good quality supplement on board. But, there's so many other layers, and there's so many, I guess, pathways I could go down here. But, movement and thoughts and your emotions, the things that you're thinking and feeling, we know now through epigenetics has a flow-on effect and can alter your DNA and also your little one's DNA. So that's a whole other topic. How are you feeling and what are you thinking in those months? And, what stories are you telling yourself? Because I guess if you look at it through the lens of would you tell your future baby this, then you might start to kind of reconsider, well, like, why am I having this looping thought? And let's maybe like start addressing those. So yeah, it's also like a whole emotional and I guess spiritual process as well.
And did you know these kind of things going into reef? Like, and you're like, all right, I'm going to dial these things in, or was it just like you found out because you were in that situation and then now you're teaching others?
Yeah, so I always knew partially about this. I always had this idea in mind that I wanted to prepare for a year before I fell pregnant. So when it didn't go that way, I was also grieving that and accepting that. But no, it wasn't until after I had Reef that I really dove into all the science and all the research around this and really started honing in on this preconception period and how we optimize this and what we do. And I guess largely, my journey wasn't that smooth post-birth. And there are definitely lots of factors that I feel could have played out differently had I really prepared my body and really deeply nourished myself before I fell pregnant with Reef. So then, yeah, basically I think I was 3 months postpartum when we started this business, which is crazy. I literally basically birthed 2 babies in the space of a few months. And yeah, and then I just poured everything that I was learning into this business and yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so the teaching of how to be nutrient rich, and then also in mind, how do you advise people to make sure that they are empowered in their mindset about everything, so then it, I guess, prepares the baby to be smarter? Is that the idea?
Yeah. So yes, they can be smarter. It can definitely impact IQ, but like I would just quickly share like some of the other things that the preconception period can really impact is also like their health outcomes, their fertility, and their immunity and like basically everything that makes us us. So it's not just like IQ and brain health, but it's like everything.
Do you take into account all the microplastics?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you saw that podcast that Joe did with that Shannon, which all about microplastics and how like the different size of the taint will predict like how fertile they're able to be.
I haven't listened to it. I will need to add that to my list.
It's wild. They did like a 50-year, it was either 30 or 50-year study, and they found that male fertility is halved because of what they say, microplastics.
Yep.
And like even just how milk, for example, is pumped out of a cow using just the soft plastic tubes. The phthalates will then come from that even.
Exactly. Yeah, it's everywhere. And, the sperm count, like you said, it's dropped by 50%. It's insane. It's
that's huge. That's like the end of our civilization.
Pretty much.
Type stuff, yeah.
Yep, it's a big deal. Yeah.
So how do you advise people, mentally to be in alignment?
Yeah, it's a really big one. And this is why we really advise people start this work before they want to have a baby, because it's huge work. Like it really depends on, I guess your life experience and what you've moved through. And, also trauma comes into this picture as well. And, there's lots of tools that I guess you can turn to really start to unpack these things.
What are some of the main ones?
Some that we speak about in our course. So we do we talk about breath work. We talk a lot about, journaling and meditating and just really like, I guess, with journaling, just noticing, first of all, what these thoughts are. I think the statistic is we have around 80,000 thoughts per day, and I think 90% of those are actually negative thoughts, and that's the average person. So it's
90% are negative.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's the statistic. We shared it on Women's Wisdom Code just the other week. And it's pretty grim if you think about it.
It is very grim.
Like
I don't think 90% of my thoughts are negative.
Yeah, well, that's it. You're probably not in, I guess, the average. We might have done
That's
work
good.
to undo this and to change this, but if you actually wrote them all down every day, like you'd probably be quite surprised. So we really advocate a lot for just journaling and, what we like to call a brain dump at the end of the day or at the start of the day, whenever it feels good for you, and just really jotting down everything that's just coming to mind. Don't worry about questions or any of that. Just paper and pen, just write what comes to mind. And just really starting to, I guess, bring that awareness to your thoughts, because for so many of us, it's very automatic and it's not something that we necessarily pay a lot of attention to. And then, of course, you have your tools like breath work, which is a really incredible way just to drop into, the subconscious and really just start working through what's there. And
What kind of breath work? Because I know Wim Hof.
yeah. We do we advocate for all sorts of breath work. So not so much Wim Hof, more, I can't remember the exact name of the style, the woman that we had do it with us, but it's very gentle. Like it's not an intense style of breath, just really, I guess, paying attention and just slowing down and just really getting your body in that state of relaxation to just even start unpacking, what might be there under the surface. Because for many of us, we don't really have the moments and space and time to just process what's actually there. So it's that opportunity of just really sitting with ourselves and starting to work through what's under the surface.
Okay, and like coming back to that silent place that we all don't really venture to as much with all the distractions we have.
Exactly. That's it, with all the phones in our world.
I'm the worst for it. I wake up, bam, phone.
Totally. If you really start paying attention, if you're waiting in a line, if you're in a waiting room, it's like phone, constantly filling those spaces where it's like, what would come up if we actually just sat with those spaces? When I'm driving is when I get most of my ideas, I guess, because like there's no phone. It's just like me and the road and bam, ideas.
I feel you on that front.
Mm.
And just something about being in motion. I find that ideas, they just come for whatever reason in motion.
Yep, I feel you. There's something to it, that's for sure.
Like even on a plane.
Yeah.
Plane or train, it doesn't matter. Just
Yep.
it works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, journaling, that's huge in terms of just that version of journaling. Because some people go, oh, answer these questions or just like narrate what your day was. And I guess any of them is a good start, but the brain dump, that makes sense to just become conscious of how you've been thinking and how you've been feeling from like dealing with emotion.
Exactly. And, once you've done it for, a couple of weeks, you start looking back and you can see the patterns of the things that come up, every day or every second day. And you're like, oh, obviously this is something that I really need to put some more energy into. This is something I need to start working through a bit more.
Yeah. What about sleep affirmation?
Yeah. You mean like playing them while you're sleeping or saying them before you sleep?
I mean, the first one, playing it while you sleep.
Interesting. I haven't personally tried it, but I'm here for it. Yeah.
I found it was good. After 30 days, I noticed like my general like thoughts, feelings was more elevated.
Interesting.
Then I have a break from it and then I'll come back to it.
Yeah. So is this something like, is this on Spotify? Like where do you access it?
Yeah, all of it. Yeah. People have made them for all channels. It's
incredible.
good. And you can choose different ones. So it's like self-love or there's probably ones directly towards motherhood. Because I've seen some that are like embrace your warrior spirit and stuff like that. It's good, if you got a fight, if you got something big going on, probably would want to, embrace that.
There you go. I'll have to give it a try.
Yeah, and then Shabani, he came on one of the other podcasts. He does Bible verses in sleep affirmation format.
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, I'm doing this.
It's an easy way, right? Because obviously your mind still hears and listens even when you sleep, just not consciously.
Exactly. That's it. And you don't have to, carve away the time per se in your day.
Exactly.
It's while you're sleeping.
Yeah. It's a little hack.
Love it.
Yeah. So what else? So everything's about kind of like getting ready for pregnancy with what you do. So how else do people get ready for pregnancy?
Yeah. Well, let me think. What have I covered? So I've covered food and all this.
Sure, I can.
There's so many things I could really speak to. So we've covered food, we've covered sleep, we've covered supplements. Well, we haven't actually fully covered supplements. This is something I might actually speak to because there's a lot of noise out there in the world, and there's a lot of marketing claims that you kind of have to really navigate around. But just getting yourself on a good quality supplement. And, there is a lot of rubbish out there, unfortunately. And, there's lots that aren't optimal, and you wouldn't know unless you're working, side by side with a practitioner. So I think just really empowering yourself with that knowledge. And, we do like little workshops and stuff on just choosing a prenatal, just to really make it really accessible for people that, lots of the supplement companies, like I said, previously are businesses. So, they're thinking about cost in mind, not necessarily optimal nutrient absorption. So just making sure you're really looking for like all of your activated forms of your nutrients.
What does that mean?
So basically the forms of nutrients are readily available for your body to absorb. And we really talk about this when it comes to B vitamins, specifically folic acid. So the whole folic acid and folate debate. So they add, folic acid to bread and all sorts of stuff in our food supply. And there is a large portion of the population, I think it's around 60%, that have a genetic mutation, which means they can't optimally convert that folic acid into the active form of folate that our body needs to use. And obviously, you hear take your folic acid to prevent neural tube defects and all of those kinds of things. So it is actually more optimal that we are choosing activated forms of, folate, because if we are in that 60%, which odds are pretty high, then we are bypassing that reaction that has to occur, and we're getting that activated form straight away. So we don't have to rely on our body converting.
So you're saying kids are having mental illnesses or disabilities because of this bread chemical?
No, I don't know on the data around, the effects necessarily on children. I don't think the research hasn't really been done on that. So I can't speak to that, but I'm just saying it's definitely not optimal for us. We might not actually be getting, as much as we might need.
What does it do? Like this, what is it called?
Folic acid.
Yeah, what is folic acid supposed to do for us?
So it's really important in forming the neural tube.
What's that?
So basically it's like your spine, and it's like the spinal cord and the brain. So it's one of the first things that form in utero.
Yeah,
I think it's formed at around 4 weeks or something like that. So it's—
You can tell I passed science.
It's a pretty big deal. And, there are neural tube defects and all sorts of things that can come of this.
What's a neural tube defect? Like, how does someone have a defect in their spine? Or is it like when you pull out a body and it all looks webby? What's it called? The nervous system.
So I think it's spina bifida and conditions like that are involved in the neural tube. So it's, yeah.
Spina bifida. That when you're wonky?
I don't know the intricacies.
Okay, but you can get some shit that's not good for your spine if you don't take folic acid.
Yeah.
Or don't have folic acid producing in your body from the bread.
Yeah, well, they add it to bread and all sorts of other random things in our food supply.
And that gets in the way of it, or it's supposed to help?
So they're doing it to try and help. So the idea is that they've fortified our foods. So we are getting this folic acid to help prevent neural tube defects. But there is that 60% of the population that can't use it optimally, so it might not be as beneficial as we thought per se.
And is this a powder or a pill, this prenatal?
There's lots of different ones. It really depends on what feels good for you. Usually it's pills. That's, the most easily digestible and I guess palatable is probably the right word. Versus
so how is it different? Like how does one, I don't know, get the nutrients of the pill as opposed to the bread?
You mean as in folic acid?
Yeah.
So in bread, they add folic acid. I don't exactly know what form and where they're pulling that from necessarily. But so basically, if say you are in that 60% of people that can't optimally use that, you might get a little bit of that, but you're not going to get all that is in that bread. So if you're not then adding more in as a supplement, you're not going to be getting enough folic acid. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Versus if you're in that 40% that can digest that, then you're probably all good. You're fine. Yeah, you can metabolize that and work with that.
And do people should they get their bloods done and check for all their nutrient levels
Definitely.
You're going to like full, like, do the gold standard of getting pregnant.
Absolutely. Yeah, we recommend just getting a full health checkup, things like your iron stores, check your thyroid function, your B12, and just all of those kinds of things, vitamin D as well. Just getting a full check over, making sure that you are, doing well. And if there are any potential, deficiencies or things aren't optimal, then you have that time to correct that versus, trying to play catch up when you're already pregnant and then your body's already diverting its nutrients to growing your baby. So you're no longer that priority.
Yeah, well, I know people are getting pretty deficient at the moment, especially with the vaccine. I have some people that I know that they got like vaccine injured, and what they got their bloods done, and it was like zinc was like crazily like low, like even compared to someone that's like a cancer patient, like for whatever reason, their vitamin levels were just super low.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, I haven't seen any like bloods or data specifically comparing that, but that's really, really fascinating around the zinc. Yeah.
Anyway, so you have that, but that's not your only business, right? You have another business that you do.
Yeah, so I also have my business, which is, I guess, my Instagram, my creative world, where I share my photography, I share my videography and my life. And yeah, that from, I guess, doing so, I've had the opportunity to work with some really incredible brands and yeah, I just create content for them and for their channels and on the odd occasion also share on my channels as well. So
yeah, and your content is cool. Like it is so, I mean, so like I found you, what was it? I don't know. It was years ago. I don't even know how I met you, but and your page is just like always been the best nature vibes ever. Like it was like you in just the coolest nature shot. You'd hardly ever post, but every time you did post, it was like, oh, this is a gold standard of a nice nature photo.
Oh, thank you. That's so funny. Yeah, I hardly ever post. And that's what's quite ironic. Like, yeah, lately I've had quite a bit of growth and I feel like I've really disproved the be consistent narrative because that's never been me. But yeah, thank you. Like photography is definitely something that I've really found a love for, specifically film photography and just, capturing moments and emotions and all the things. And I just love looking back on a photo and being immediately teleported back to, that moment, that feeling, that time in my life and, remembering all that was going on. And
yeah, well, you like capture oasis. That's how I would put it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so in terms of now that you're doing business, you're into like parenthood and all that, how have you found your like social media journey changing?
Yeah, it's definitely been a tricky one. So in the early years of, being a mum, I always had so many intentions to share. And that's the funny thing. I always intend to share, but I never really do. I just forget or I'm a perfectionist and, it's not it. So then I don't share. But I definitely dropped off a lot in those early, years of motherhood. And it isn't really until recently that I really picked things back up. And I think, partially because I was still very much finding my feet in motherhood, obviously it was a huge surprise and there was a lot of growing pains and having to find, I guess, me within all of that and really working through and refining what was still true for me, what shifted, what was important now, because a lot of things shifted for me. And yeah, only recently have I started to really show back up there because I feel finally, after a couple years, really strong in who I am and what I really feel is true to me and what I want to share and what I want to add to the world. Like I think I've really toyed with the fact that there's so much noise online for the last few years and really just not wanting to like add to that. I don't know, like not really sure how to put it into words, but yeah, I've
very being too modest.
I've really struggled with like not wanting to just add more noise, but also wanting to share my truth. And especially now being a parent and as someone that I would say parents quite different to the mainstream narrative, I feel like it's more important now that I share and I show up and I show how we're raising Reef because it is quite different and just showing others that it's possible and it doesn't have to look this way. You can do it any way that feels good for you.
How's it different? What's the best way to raise in your, or just not best way because obviously you might get, what is the way you're raising and why are you doing things different?
Yeah, so I would say my biggest thing is I'm just trying to raise him as close to nature as possible. So outside as much as possible. Like we spend probably 60% or more of our days outside, whereas most kids probably what was the average? Somebody shared like a statistic not too long ago around how many like minutes the average child gets outside, and it's minutes. Like it's not even we're not even talking an hour here, which is crazy. There's so much disconnect when it comes to nature. So for me, just really, bringing him outside and really fostering that connection to the earth, to the seasons, to where our food comes from, and all of those things, and just really trying to be present for him. Like myself and my partner Kyle, we have kind of made our work, we've been lucky enough to find work that fits, our lifestyle, and meaning that we can both be present for Reef every single day. Like we're both with him every day. And I know that's not possible for many, many people. So yeah, just really, I guess we then get the time to share our values and what's important. We're not like, outsourcing our parenting, which a lot of people are really forced into for reasons beyond their control, financial.
Well, the system's set up that way, right? Send kids to school.
Exactly.
Send kid to, what was it, like 3 now? They want kids out of the home because people need to get back to work.
Exactly. That's it. And then, who knows what values they're picking up,
Well, we can see they're learning a bunch of fucked up shit, to be honest.
Yeah.
Learning some wild stuff,
I know.
And kids are getting put on medications and all that all the time. Like even ADHD, they'd give Ritalin, which no child should be on pharmaceutical drugs like Ritalin. It's just not good for you. And what we found, because my brother, he had ADHD, and unfortunately my parents were like, oh yeah, let's put him on a Ritalin, because they were just going with what the doctor was saying. But before that, Mum did say that when he was completely off sugar, he got to chill out heaps, and it was like his actually mind and sugar just didn't really link up very well.
Interesting. Yeah, that's it. And there are so many little, lifestyle changes like that can be so profound in those pictures. But, lots of people don't really have the, give themselves the time and space to explore those. It's kind of like, well, this is the option. Take the pill, take the thing. There you go. Like, job's done. That's all we're going to do. So yeah, I hear that a lot. That's really, really something that comes up a lot in my world. And I guess that's why we really just want to do things so different. Like, I don't feel like the schooling system is the be all and end all, and, necessarily the way we should be doing things. School very much, in our opinion, we're setting people up to be employable. But for me, I really, really just want to leave Reef. If I could leave him with anything, it's, you can do anything, you can be anything. Like I really want to encourage like his entrepreneurial spirit, and just like leave him with any path that he wants to take, show him that there are all of these options and you can pick any of them. It doesn't just have to look like this, you don't just have to be employable. Like if you have an idea and if you want to make a shift in this world that you see, do it. Yeah.
Badass. I like that. You're raising warrior.
Thank you.
That's what it's about. We got tough times coming.
We do.
Got the World Economic Forum trying to make 15-minute cities, cutting down farms, and polluting airways by the looks of it. Wild.
I know. That's it. That's why I feel like lots of these kids coming through. As much as I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a parent. I think what made me make peace with it was I feel like I need to be. He clearly wanted to come at this time for a reason. I fell pregnant by surprise. Everything aligned so perfectly. He chose his time here. I feel like he has a big mission to share. And yeah.
Yeah. So do you think that a soul chooses, you believe in soul? Soul chooses the life that it goes into, the parents it goes into, knowing the broad brushstrokes of the life that it will live, so it can have the opportunities to learn lessons?
I think so, yeah. And what's so wild, there have been a few times that Reef has said, now that he's 3 and he's communicating a lot more with us, he's said, I'm so glad I picked you, Mum and Dad. And I'm like, oh, what? And trying
You're saying it's true.
I try and quiz him more. I'm like, what do you mean? What did you pick us from? Tell me more.
Yeah, well, there's that idea, right, that kids are closest to soul when they're young. So then things from past lives and all that come through.
Yep.
and this like kind of like sage wisdom that is just soul. And then we like build up all this ego and barrier that gets in the way of just continuing to be that soul, but with greater, brain power.
Exactly. And honestly, I'm just believing that to be so true. Just witnessing him and the things that he says and the things that he does that we have never even shared necessarily. You're just like, wait.
Like what?
So many things. Like he has this like wild story that he's been telling us lately of, when he was living on this different planet, he had like a rocket ship and, we haven't really, read stories around rocket ships much yet. So it's like, where have you even learned about rocket ships? And like, he'll say, oh, then my rocket ship broke and, I had to go get someone to fix it, but he couldn't fix it. We didn't have the parts. And, he just has this whole like elaborate story, but he tells it like very often. And
it's just scavenger on like Star Wars planet. It's just like my ship's goddamn.
Literally. And it just evolves more and more as he speaks around it. But just so many little things. And, he's so intuitive. Like he will literally just label my emotions. He'll be like, Mum, you're feeling really frustrated. Like, do you want to cuddle? I'm like, I am. Like,
and you like didn't say anything. You just pick it up.
Yeah. There's no hiding. Like there's no hiding at all. He sees all of it and feels all of it. So yeah.
That's so cool. Maybe it's because he's been around the earth so much, right?
Maybe that's it. And that rocket ship.
That's cool. Yeah, because I'm sure you know, but the grounding idea, right, is that the energy comes into you super quick and they can't even measure how quick it is, but like inflammation. Do you see that I haven't seen the doco, but I've seen the trailer for the doco that they did all about grounding and like people sleeping grounded and all that, and they did body scans.
Wow, I haven't seen that. I need to add that to my list, but it doesn't surprise me. Honestly, the shifts that we have felt as a family since, being outside so much more than we were is huge. And, you really feel the difference on the days when you don't do it. Like for this last week, we've been back home, just staying like with family and in a home, we've just naturally spent a lot more time in home. It's obviously like winter and cold outside. So you're like, well, I've got this big space. I don't need to go outside. And then, before you know it, it's been a couple of days and you just start feeling a bit ick. And then, you get back outside and you're like, this is it. This is what I needed, and we can just really feel that difference for us as a family.
Yeah, because you guys are doing van life, right?
Yeah, yes.
Where have you been?
So we have done like most of SA, then we slowly made our way down the Great Ocean Road, and then we've just been in Tassie the last few months, which is like, oh my gosh, take me back.
Yeah, what's Tassie like? I haven't been there yet.
It's incredible. Like honestly, our favorite place so far, it's just got everything, from one side of the island, you've got beautiful clear water, white sand, these pristine beaches that you would think are just straight from, Exmouth or Esperance in WA. And then on the other side, which is just like a 3-hour drive, you've got mountains and all these beautiful hikes. Like it's just insane. It's got everything. Like if you like the outdoors, like Tassie is your place.
I do like the outdoors. It sounds like a better go. So I think a big thing for people, right, you were saying that, since we've been home, we've been chilling inside a lot. And when we're outside, a lot of people go like, wouldn't you just get bored? Like, what do you do? Mm-hmm. So what are you doing when you're outside, gallivanting, having fun and being all this connected, what are you doing?
Yeah, honestly, we're just kind of being like that's something I've really had to wrap my head around. Like when we first, got in the van, it was like, okay, what are we doing today? What do we do? What do we do? And lots of that, what are we doing? We would ask ourselves that, we would ask each other that. And just being in the van and just going outside and taking out, a blanket down to the beach with some snacks and, a book or whatever and just sitting on the beach, like that's what we're doing. We're not doing anything per se. We're just kind of leaning more into being in the moment and in the place. And for us, like we've found that Reef is so much more entertained and so much more him and, in his element and in his world when he is outside and just at the beach. Like at home, if we're in a house, he's looking to me and Kyle for entertainment. Like a lot of the time, he's really wanting to us to drive the activities to set something up like, hey, like play, let's do something. Whereas as soon as we step foot outside, he's like, oh my gosh, there are shells over here. Oh, look at these sticks. Like, look at this leaf. Like, oh my
So
gosh.
he kind of makes it fun because he has such a active imagination,
Totally. Yeah.
curiosity for just life. And you're like, oh, I know shells, but he doesn't know shells. So let me teach him about shells.
Totally. And he just gets in his own little world. Like he'll just collect them and he plays for hours. Like the difference when he's outside compared to when he's in a house is huge.
Yeah. Well, I saw this quote yesterday and was just like, God is the greatest artist. There's like all these like videos going through these nature spots. And it's true, like nature is phenomenal. It's
Absolutely.
so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially when you go to beautiful nature spots.
Yeah.
Which you've obviously been doing actively.
Absolutely. And it's so humbling. Like, holy crap, all of my worries, like, are they really that relevant? Like, look at this, And for me, like, I feel like sunset's always like as cliche and cheesy as it is, it's always like that moment of like, oh my gosh, like there is so much magic. Like, how do we look over this every day? Like, look at what is happening right in front of us. Like, why is nobody paying more attention to that?
Right. Oh, I love looking at the sunset. I'm moving into this apartment on like a top floor. And I'm just so keen to watch the sunset each night because above the city, the sun, it's either at the ocean or like above the city is like the two best sunset spots.
Yeah.
So or on a mountain. Actually, on a mountain is a pretty cool one too.
Definitely. There's something about it, like that red light, that's so good.
Yeah, it was a good one the other night actually. But okay, so it's just like slowing down that pace and just like being and enjoying life. Like almost in a hunter-gatherer-esque fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think that us as a peoples, as a species, we've kind of got this obsession with creating and doing and innovating. And if you're not doing something, if you're not building something, you're worthless.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just acting in rebellion to that by just living.
We're trying to anyway.
Yeah. Well, I noticed Reese is doing a similar thing.
Yeah.
Like he's just, Reese, obviously, Menzel.
I do, yes.
He's a good man.
He is.
He's a good man.
I mean, he's a dad now too.
He's a dad now. How good's his content been?
I know.
It's been great.
I know. I've been loving on that.
Climbing trees and shit. Like.
Yes.
So anybody listening, Reese Menzel is a good man. He has a kid. He's similar vein, like full alternative, and just to paint the picture, like hippie lifestyle, without the shade of like, oh, you're a hippie, but like in a positive way. And is a ninja warrior, has complete dexterity over his body and just can like climb and swing and do all the things that a monkey can do, but he's a human.
Yes, that is the best intro to him ever. Can do all the things as a monkey, but is a human. I love it.
That's it. I mean, look, you got to practice to keep your body moving, right?
Totally. Mm-hmm.
And how have you found, like, is that something like movement? Is that a big thing in your life that you practice as well?
Yeah, definitely try to. I mean, in winter, it's always that little bit harder, right?
Like, cold.
It's freezing.
Yeah. Did you go in cold plunges in Tasmania?
Yeah. I'm a lover for that. A cold swim every morning. That's how I love to start my day. And honestly, that's, in my opinion, the best way to start the day. Like the clarity that comes after that is just like huge. Like I think I saw like this TikTok, or maybe it was a reel. Some guy was saying that a cold plunge increases your dopamine by 2.5%. That's the same amount that a line of cocaine increases your dopamine by. But that line of cocaine peaks at around 10 minutes or something like that. Whereas like the cold plunge, like you got a good 9 hours of like increased dopamine. Like it is insane.
Yes, I have heard that. I think that was Andrew Huberman that said it. Yeah, it's just simple, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Just simple. Just get in some cold water, eat some whole foods that's around you, try to make sure it doesn't happen. So what does actually seed oils do? Like you would actually be able to explain the science of what it's doing, right?
Yeah, so they are quite inflammatory for our body for many reasons, one of which being like the solvents that they use to extract the oil from these seeds. So, if you think about canola, like it's not particularly oily if you're looking at the plant. Like it's like, you look at an avocado, you can see how that's quite fatty, it's quite oily naturally. Whereas canola, they have to really like extract and press that to get oil out of that. So they use lots of chemical solvents. I don't know the names of the exact chemicals off the top of my head, but ultimately they're quite inflammatory and obviously quite nasty for the body. So they're adding these solvents to then get the oil out of the plant, and then that's naturally going to obviously be in what you're in that oil, in that solution that you're then pouring on your food. So yeah, it's really quite inflammatory, and that's the main reason, I guess, as to why people want to avoid these sorts of things.
Yeah, well, I heard that seed oils in particular, they like hook onto some receptors inside your body, and they allow you to get fat, but they also lead to a lot of chronic illness.
Interesting.
Over like long-term exposure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Very fascinating stuff. And it's everywhere.
Have you seen what's going on in like New York and Canada at the moment with the air?
No, I haven't.
So there's like these wild bushfires going on in eastern Canada, and there are some sus videos online of like all these fires coming at once, which I don't know. Mm-hmm. It looks a little sus. You're like, oh, is this arson? You know?
Yeah.
But anyway, all the air is going down the East Coast, and the concern that people are having from like I don't want to say the conspiracy theory community, because like a lot of it's just coming true and that like tarnishes in bad light, but the people that try to connect the dots instead of just looking at everything as isolated incidents see that, you know, for example, the World Health Organization has a thing called the Pandemic Treaty with all the different countries around the world, and they're amending that at the moment. And one of the things they're amending in that is that like what is a state of emergency can also include things to do with the climate. So the idea is that they're going to have climate emergencies in our future and like be able to have lockdowns and stuff like that in the similar vein to, you know, what they did with COVID, but for climate emergencies. And they are trying to have it so the countries around the world don't protest it because it's an amendment, so they don't have to actively say yes to it. They just have to not say no to it. And it's like driven by the bureaucracy and the unelected. And yeah, because it includes the climate stuff, and, you know, people are now going, oh, these wild climate events that are happening, you know, is this preparing us for what a climate emergency could look like? And then to bring in rules, but from a global centralized body.
Wow. Oh my gosh. You know, as you were speaking, like a lot of the reason why we turned to van life, you know, it was during COVID. We were like, we want a way out, you know, we want to be more self-sufficient. You know, I think the idea of being able to get in my van and drive away and I've got kind of what I need for a good while to survive is like also a large reason why we're living in a van.
Like bug out ready.
Yeah, literally. And what did they just pass in SA like a while ago? Is it you can't protest now? Is that?
Well, no, it's not that you can't protest. So that is actually, that's a bit misconstrued. Mm-hmm. So what is the situation there is that they're essentially making that you can't obstruct, you can't obstruct public places. For example, like right now it's like if you want to protest, you get a permit.
Okay.
And if you want to go in this street, you say we're going to have 100,000 people. We get this permit. They can't necessarily like say no to the permit because we have the right to protest. But it just gives the police and all that as opportunity to say, all right, let's close this street off and divert traffic and all that. So when people do these flash protests and like, you know, Extinction Rebellion gluing themselves to the ground and whatnot, it just like, it causes a huge effect to your public economy. And most of the time they go, look, I just want to live my life. Like go away. Like,
yeah,
it's not to say no to protesting. It's, that's what I understand. It's more to just like stop doing illegal stuff about when protesting.
That makes sense. Yeah, like gluing yourself to roads. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's just like, oh, well, now these other, like I even saw people put like their arms inside a poly pipe and have like glass shards all inside it, so then they can't move them without hurting the person.
Oh my!
Like it's extreme stuff, you know.
Wow,
it is extreme.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I can see kind of where they're coming from with that one. Then,
yeah, I can see where they're coming from. You know, and then like Gandhi, you know, he's one of the best protesters of all time, really. That was non-violent, and then the Brits left.
Totally. That's it. It doesn't have to be violent.
Does not have to be violent or overly dramatic. I guess, I don't know, history paints many pictures around protesting.
It does.
You know, no, it's not one size. So, yeah, I do get people's concerns about that, but
Mhm.
And I think it's just it all depends on the state of where you're at. Because if you're in like, Soviet Russia versus right now, they're very different climates. I would think,
Yep.
if you have mass famine actively going on, I think a lot of the rules of how you should and should not protest may go out the window.
Totally. As it would naturally. Yep.
Yes.
Mm.
But if you're in a normal civilized society, everybody can get what they want to get, everything's calm. It's like, well, I guess law and order,
Yep.
is a bigger deal,
It is.
right?
It is.
We have the privilege to be able to say, let's operate with it as opposed to without it because everything else is sorted. So, we can be civilized about how we resolve disputes.
Very true. Very, very true. Mm-hmm. Thanks for clarifying that one for me.
All right. I've been working in politics. I just I hear all about it all now.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, being interstate, I just saw someone share something about it. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, well, sometimes people do get overinflated, and it comes from a good place because they're like libertarian, like fuck you, I don't want to be controlled. So I get it, but it's like it's not not black and white.
That's it. Finding the truth in it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like the bee thing. I saw these videos about them coming in and killing people's bee farms.
Really? Where?
Yeah, I think it was on the eastern seaboard. And then, the people that were getting their bee farm, they were like protesting about it, like in this video, posting, like, take it on my bees, da da da. They haven't even tested them and then I checked the comments and it was like, oh, there's some bee virus that's going all around.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, so then there's two lines of thoughts. Is the virus real, and are they just trying to fuck with bees? Because, I don't know, it may affect the ecology and growing things and independence and all that. I guess that would be the narrative. Or is there a bee virus and they can't just test every single bee colony because it would take a long time?
That's quite the question. When we went to Tassie, we had to be like pretty careful with like honey and stuff. I had this like incredible honey of mine. It was like so expensive. It was like $80 and, had like mushrooms and all the good things in it. And I got confiscated at the border. I was like, oh no. And he's like, it's going to go in quarantine in the bin. I was like, can you just take it home and have it? Like, it's really good.
It's good. I made this honey. Did you make it?
No, I bought it from a lovely lady that does.
Plug it. Where's this honey plug?
Embody Bee.
Where's that?
So if you go on Instagram and check out Embody Bee, it's a lovely lady called Emily, and she has her own bees and she processes all of her own honey, and it is the most beautiful honey. It contains like royal jelly and propolis, which if you don't know about those, look into them. They're like really antiviral and have so many amazing benefits for our bodies.
I have heard of propolis actually. I went to a naturopath when COVID started and was like, what do I actually need for my immune system? Because that seemed like the logical thing to do when a, influenza-esque coronavirus thing was going around.
Yes.
I don't know why nobody was talking about that at the time. But anyway, I digress. I heard of propolis because the naturopath gave me propolis as part of that.
Wow, there you go. Yeah, it's powerful stuff, and it's actually quite hard to find it. Well, it's not in honey usually. Like lots of people process it, and it's lost. So she keeps it in her honey and has like she adds like lion's mane and reishi and ashwagandha and all sorts of different things in her honey, and she's got heaps of blends.
Powder form?
I don't know. That's a very good question.
Like of the mushroom, I mean.
Yeah. Yes. And then,
like, can you see chunks of mushroom when you're eating it?
No.
Okay, so it's probably powder.
Yeah.
Cool. That's exciting. So why do you – and you get a promo code there, don't you?
I do.
What's your promo code?
Maddison Cate, double D on the Maddison, and Cate with a C. I think that gets you 10% off. Yeah, good stuff. And her bee pollen, amazing.
Beautiful. So what else is in your ecosystem of life?
Yeah. Well, something I kind of really, I guess, wanted to speak to and what feels like really true for me at the moment in my world, in parenting, and I don't know if there are any other parents like is listening, they might relate, but just what's been so true in our world is this whole like nuclear family thing and like our culture and, we're all operating as nuclear family units and just how freaking backwards that is when you're a parent and just trying to operate and parent in this structure and just how hard it is. Like, I feel like a lot of people online, like obviously see us living in a van and think that we've had to have a lot to get there. But the reality is actually true. We've had to actually sacrifice quite a lot to get there. So obviously, yeah, just how, our grandparents are all still having to work and be in the workforce because of cost of living and all these things, And I guess like coming these pockets of time when we come back home and we, stay with our family and just like see the dynamics of, how things could be if we all just came together, like, overseas, in Indonesia, like the multiple generations live in one dwelling, the grandparents are there, the parents are there, the kids are there. And it's like this little communal effort and energy to raise a child, and just like how hard it is to do just with two people.
Well, isn't that the idea of the nuclear family, to have family around?
No. So the nuclear family is this whole like single living idea. That's from my understanding, like that they want us all in our own little like mum, dad, kids house kind of situation, and we're all separate and doing our own thing, versus, if you have like the grandparents in your house, then I'm not sure what the term for that might be. Do you know?
No, I thought nuclear family was just the emphasis of having family structures and as opposed to not having family structure.
I'm not sure. Maybe we'll have to check on that one, but
yeah, I'll look it up. You keep talking about why that's important, and I'll Google what nuclear family definition is.
Yes, thank you. But yeah, like, I don't know, just the way that our culture does it, and just the many hats that I guess mum and dads have to wear. Like, yeah, that's just something that we're really navigating in our world at the moment. And just, I guess, trying to find a way to thrive in that environment when, there's multiple roles beyond, capacity a lot of the time.
Get it out. So the nuclear family, there's a few definitions here. So the first one, you're right, a family unit consisting of a mother, father, and their children. Now, the second version is a family consisting of parents and their children and grandparents of a marital partner.
Interesting.
And then the next one is a family unit consisting of, at most, a father, mother, and dependent children. A family consisting of parents and their children and grandparents of, I don't know what the marital partner bit means.
Wow. So they're kind of saying both.
Yeah, they're kind of saying both. So I guess it's the emphasis on family, which I think is important, because we are kind of in a time where the family having sovereignty of how they want to raise their kids is being like thrown out, and it's saying, no, the state knows better and you should be able to do it like this. A great example in Canada is being able to put your kid on puberty blockers and stuff like that, and like the state and the school can override the parents' decisions about their minor child, which has happened. Like, it's wild, whether whatever side of the fence you sit on, whether transgenderism is even real, or whether It's, should a parent be able to choose what their child does? Vaccination's another one. You've clearly taken a stance on that. Should a parent be able to choose what their child does? And it's like, well, you made it, right? You made it. And it's not like you're being, I can understand it if you're on welfare.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a welfare state person, just do what you do what the government says, because you're reliant on them to survive, to live. But if you're not, if you're independent, well, it's like, I think part of that freedom should be to choose how you raise your child. And obviously there are some barriers. Like, if you're beating your child, like, yes, that's an issue. Or you're raping your child. Like, yeah, no, that's not cool.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. It's a big topic. And like, I guess the thing is, like, we are responsible to guide and shape our children until they reach an age where they can kind of make those decisions themselves. And like, with that whole conversation, what really comes back, what I really think of and what feels true for me is, I don't know, like when I was younger, I wanted to be XYZ, like I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be like a, whatever it was, like, I think our role is to just guide them, and be there until they're at an age where they can make those sound decisions, which, I mean, at what point is that? I'm not sure. I look at my 18-year-old self, I'm like, were those sound decisions? I'm not sure. It's a big, big topic though.
Yeah, because kids are dumb.
Well, we're growing and developing, and like, I think our brains, they're growing to like they're 25 and they're changing until they're 25, and then when you move through matrescence, your brain grows again. They say it's like the second adolescence, like the amount of brain growth that you have during that time is comparable with adolescence, which is huge. So
when you're having a baby?
Yeah.
Wow.
So when you're pregnant, your brain is moving through basically a second adolescence, which is huge.
Wild. Did you find that you got just way more sage?
Yeah, your intuition is like turned up by like 100, but also like there's lots that's like down regulated. So like it's like pruning in a sense of the things that you don't need. And it's really like biologically to prime you to be attuned to like your baby. So you're more attuned to those subtle cues that they give, like, crying and all of those kinds of things. And it also down regulates certain things that you might not need. But yeah, it's an interesting one. Certain pathways are definitely heightened, like intuition being one. Like you just know what is for your child and what isn't. Like it's so strong.
In a social example and like those different stages, right? Did you find that when you were younger, and in that, I guess, stage of whatever you call it, that adolescence, but before the pregnancy, that you had just like an energy about you that was more like communicative? It was more like attention to like desire to please and like, I don't know, be what would make sense if you look at it from the macro perspective or a meta perspective, rearing to get a partner. And then when you went through this, it kind of did change you to go, well, that's actually not an interest anymore.
Definitely.
Like from like the biological to brainwave.
Absolutely. Yeah. Such a big difference. I really feel that to be true. Like, your focuses and what feels important to you shifts hugely. And like, I guess there's like the way people speak about it is like, your maiden self, which is like your pre-baby self, and then like your mother self. So like the maiden self, which is like the first, roughly 25 years of a woman's life, is that like, outwards energy, that outgoing, that like, self kind of view. Like I'm just doing me, like, obviously looking for a partner, whatever you might be doing. And then from 25 onwards, or, whenever you have a baby, you shift into that mother energy, which is more pouring back into like, obviously your little ones or like those around you, or like your business, if you have a business, like whatever it might be, like you really like step into this full like caretaker role. So yeah, there's a huge difference. I really felt that to be true in my world and in my life. Yeah,
that's cool. Okay, so in terms of like back to parents and their sovereignty over their children, where do you see the lines drawn for you?
For me, I mean, I guess I am making decisions on behalf of him, and I will be, I guess, until he is able to say otherwise.
Yeah, keep going.
So I don't know, like I feel like we're meant to guide. We're there to guide. And I think it kind of is our responsibility in a way to guide them, whether that be like subtly redirecting or, just really sitting them down and talking them through it. Like I feel like it's this really fine balance. Like you obviously want to maintain like a really strong connection and that trust. So, your child will come to you with whatever it might be, but also like guide them in a way, like, does that kind of answer your question? Like,
yes, it does. However, the battery has just run out of battery. So I think we're going to end it here.
Amazing. Sounds good.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate you. Thank you for just sharing about your whole journey and experience. Let me just put these headphones on. Yeah, thanks for sharing about your journey, your experiences, your knowledge. I know we could sit here for like literally hours more and go down a bunch more rabbit holes. So in the future, we'll have to get on again, especially as the world develops and, motherhood and actually being a good parent and good family, becomes a rare thing.
Yeah.
Which I think it kind of is. I think that's the way it's moving. But anyway, let's be the resistance. So thank you. And where can people find you? Like, what are your socials and all that?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome just chatting and rambling on all the different things. So you can find me over on Instagram. My handle is Maddison with a _ _Cate with a C. I'm also on TikTok. And then if you're interested in preconception work and the whole fertility world, we're over at Women's Wisdom Co. on Instagram as well. But that's all linked in my bio. But yeah, that's me.
Excellent. Thank you for listening to Watch Your Voyage. Peace.